The iPhone 8 versus the iPhone 7s. Which one should you guys get? So both of these phones are actually being announced not this Tuesday, but the following Tuesday, so on September the 12th. Now, Apple has actually confirmed this event 2 days ago, by the way. So here's the invite. Join us here September the 12th, 10 a.m. Pacific Daytime, to watch the first event held at the Steve Jobs Theater. Now, in case you want to take a look at everything we're expecting to see at the Apple event, I've actually done a really in-depth video on everything we're expecting to see. Now, we are getting a ton of announcements. So this is actually by far the biggest Apple event yet. Not just because of the number of announcements, because we're getting a lot of them, but also because the announcements, every single one is pretty big. Now, the biggest two ones would be the iPhone 8 and the iPhone 7s. So which one of these two should you guys get? Well, the iPhone 8 is obviously better, but the iPhone 7s also comes with a ton of changes and a ton of new features. So in this video, I want to compare all the differences between these two when it comes to the design, the display, camera specs, special features, capacity, price, battery, and so much more. So yeah, as always, grab some popcorn and enjoy. Okay, so starting off with number one, we have the design. So design-wise, the iPhone 8 is definitely the winner here by a mile. So with the iPhone 8, Apple has redesigned the iPhone entirely. They removed the home button completely, the side bezels, the bottom bezels, pretty much everything on the front except for that top sensor bar. So pretty much everything in terms of the bezels except for that top sensor bar is gone. Now the sides are now made out of stainless steel, by the way. So very similar to the stainless steel on the Apple Watch. And then the back is now made out of glass. So similar to how the iPhone 4 and the iPhone 4S looked back in the day. Now the iPhone 7s and the iPhone 7s Plus, on the other hand, have mostly the same design style as the iPhone 7, the iPhone 6s, and even the iPhone 6 from 2014. However, there is one major difference, and that's the fact that the iPhone 7s finally comes with a glass back. So the aluminum back that we got with the previous iPhones is now gone, and instead we have this really nice looking glass back. But the biggest difference between these two is just how small the iPhone 8 actually is. So comparing the iPhone 8 to the iPhone 7s Plus, the iPhone 8 is so much smaller and so much easier to hold in the hand. But at the same time, it also comes with a much larger display. And same goes when you compare the iPhone 8 to the 4.7 inches iPhone 7s. So the iPhone 8 is indeed slightly longer and wider, but then it also comes with a much larger display. So design-wise, the iPhone 8 is clearly the winner here, but it's good to see that the iPhone 7s at least got a glass back, so it's not really the same design as the iPhone 7, 6s, and the iPhone 6. Slightly different. Moving on to the display, we are getting a much larger display on the iPhone 8. So 5.8 inches on the iPhone 8 versus 5.5 and 4.7 inches on the iPhone 7s and 7s Plus. Now, when it comes to the resolution, we are getting the same resolution on the iPhone 7s as on all the iPhones since the iPhone 6. So that's 1334 by 750 on the iPhone 7s. This would actually translate to a PPI of 326, and then 1920 by 1080 on the iPhone 7s Plus, which would translate to a PPI of 401. The iPhone 8, however, comes with a much higher resolution display, 2436 by the way by 1125, which would actually translate to a PPI of 462. So either this or a second option would be 2800 by 1242, which would actually translate to a PPI of 528, which would actually put it on par with the Samsung Galaxy S8. But 2436 by 1125 is most likely going to be the resolution. So what about the aspect ratio? Well, in terms of the aspect ratio, we are getting an 18 by 9 aspect ratio on the iPhone 8 versus 16 by 9 on the iPhone 7s. So what does this mean? Well, it means that the iPhone 8 will be able to display more vertical content on the display. So when you're reading web pages, when you're scrolling through your social media feed, for example, that would be a much better experience on the iPhone 8. Now, another difference is when it comes to the refresh rate. So this is actually a pretty big difference between these two. Now, in terms of the refresh rate, the iPhone 8 is said to support the ProMotion technology that we've seen in the 2017 iPad Pros. So what does this mean? Well, it means that the display would actually be at 120 Hz panel versus 60 Hz. And what this means is that basically everything you do, so playing games, navigating through the menu, and using apps, everything would be twice more fluid than before, since basically the display would be able to show up to 120 frames per second versus 60 frames per second. And by the way, the good news is that this promotion technology would also help improve battery life. So and that's because it won't be running the display at 120 Hz all the time. Instead, the refresh rate will be dynamically adjustable depending on the content that you're watching. But actually, the biggest difference between these two phones when it comes to the display would actually be in terms of the display panel. So we're finally getting an OLED display with the iPhone 8, and this is big news. So the only other Apple product that uses an OLED display would be the Apple Watch. And that's pretty much it. So the iPhone 7s would still use an LCD panel, so same as with every single iPhone before it. And there's a lot of differences between these two technologies, by the way, so OLED and LCD, but basically what you need to know is that overall OLED is the much more superior technology. And that's because OLED doesn't require a backlight, since the pixels, they provide both the color and the backlight. And then you also have much more vibrant colors. But the biggest difference actually would be in terms of black levels. So with an OLED display, you can finally have those deep black levels, which weren't actually possible with an LCD display. Not even to mention that an OLED display, by the way, has a much lower power consumption, which will improve battery life. Okay, so moving on to the specs. The good news here is that we're actually getting the exact same specs on both for the most part. So the Apple A11 processor on both, or should I say all three models. And the Apple A11 processor is just a beast. So it's now based on a smaller 10nm process. And by the way, the Geekbench scores have been leaked from multiple sources. We had about 4 leaks. And the average of these scores would be 4500 for the single core and 8500 for the multi-core, which is just crazy. So that's actually more than a 13-inch 2017 MacBook Pro, by the way. And it's very, very close single core wise to the 2017 top-of-the-line 15-inch MacBook Pro, which by the way comes with the i7-7920HQ processor, which by the way is the flagship, the Kaby Lake flagship. So that's the most powerful processor that you can get in any laptop computer in 2017, which is unbelievable. And both the iPhone 8 and the iPhone 7s will come with the Apple A11 chip. Now, in terms of the RAM, we do get a few differences here. So 3GB of RAM on the iPhone 8 and the iPhone 7s Plus, and then 2GB on the iPhone 7s. Now, this won't actually make that much of a difference in case you're wondering. So in case you are wondering how, for example, the iPhone 7 Plus with 3GB of RAM compares to the iPhone 7 with 2GB of RAM, I've actually done an ultimate speed test on this in case you're curious to see. But yeah, spoiler, there's not that much difference. So you'll be okay even with 2GB of RAM on iOS. Okay, so what about the camera? Well, camera-wise, these phones are actually pretty similar. So we do have a 12 megapixel sensor on the back on both, and both of these phones can actually do 4K video at 60 frames per second on both the front-facing camera and the back-facing camera, which is just crazy considering that, you know, the front-facing camera on the iPhone 7 was limited to 1080p 30. The biggest difference between these two phones would be the dual camera module. This is exclusive to the iPhone 8 and the iPhone 7s Plus, so you wouldn't be able to get this in the iPhone 7s, the 4.7-inch model, since this will be coming with only a single lens camera module. Now, another big difference is that the camera on the iPhone 8 is going to come with a 3D camera module on the front, along with a ton of other sensors. So all of these would actually allow it to 3D scan your face for some really awesome and amazing features. And speaking of all the new features, here's where the iPhone 8 really stands out from the iPhone 7s. So on the iPhone 8 we get Face ID. So the ability to basically 3D analyze your face. And this would be the replacement for Touch ID, which by the way is going away from the iPhone 8. Now, according to inside sources, Face ID would be faster, more secure, and also more precise than Touch ID, which I actually find pretty hard to believe. But yeah, basically all you need to know is that you will no longer be using your fingerprint for unlocking your iPhone or making Apple Pay payments. Instead, everything will be done by facial recognition on the iPhone 8, which the iPhone 7s will lack. So the iPhone 8 will come with an iris scanner, an infrared receiver, infrared transmitter, all of which will help the camera scan your face. So what else? Well, we get water resistance on both, and it's actually going to be improved from the iPhone 7, so from IP67 to IP68. Then we also get wireless charging on both the iPhone 8 and the iPhone 7s. And by the way, this is why the iPhone 7s comes with the glass back. And you do need to purchase a separate charging dock, which would be priced around $100 or $180 between 80 to 70 pounds in the UK. And this dock would actually be released later on this year. So you would need that dock if you want to use the wireless charging features on any of these phones. Okay, then another big feature on the iPhone 8 is going to be the home button. So on the iPhone 7s, this is actually going to behave in pretty much the exact same way as it did on the iPhone 7. So even though it doesn't click physically, it does have a haptic engine underneath it which vibrates, and it gives you the impression that you've pressed it even though, physically the button doesn't actually move. On the iPhone 8, however, we will be getting the Taptic Engine 2.0 for an even more realistic, feel when you press the home button, and also UI elements, since you will also be getting haptic engine for the UI, for the entire UI, not just for the home button. But yeah, in the end, on the iPhone 7s, everything will be the same as on the iPhone 7, so yeah, no big differences on the iPhone 7s. And then Tap to Wake is also coming on the iPhone 8, along with a night dock mode. So that's actually similar to what we have on the Apple Watch. So you just put your iPhone into the dock and then you see the time at night, which is pretty cool, night clock. And along with that, we will most likely have an always on display on the iPhone 8. So similar to the Samsung Galaxy S8, the S7, and more. So that's also expected to come. And with an always on display, you can always see your notifications, you can see your clock, you can see your calendar, and so on, even when the display is turned off. Okay, so what about the battery? Well, in terms of the battery, on the iPhone 7s, we have roughly the same battery size as on the iPhone 7s. So that's 1960 mAh on the iPhone 7s and 2900 mAh on the iPhone 7s Plus. Now on the iPhone 8, however, we are getting a battery size of around 2700 mAh. So does this mean that the iPhone 7s Plus has the best battery life for a 2017 iPhone? Well, maybe, but not necessarily, since the iPhone 8 also comes with an OLED display, which is much more power efficient than an LCD display that you get with the iPhone 7s. And then the ProMotion display is again more power efficient. So yeah, overall expect the iPhone 7s and the iPhone 7s Plus to have a better battery life than both the iPhone 7 and the iPhone 7 Plus, since they both come with a much more power efficient Apple A11 processor. And then expect the iPhone 8 to be around the same battery life as the iPhone 7s Plus. Maybe, just maybe, a tiny bit better, but I wouldn't really count on that. Okay, so what about the storage options? Well, the iPhone 7s will definitely come in 32 gigabytes, and then either 128 gigabytes or 256 gigabytes. The iPhone 8, however, will be coming in 64 and 256. However, there is a strong possibility that the iPhone 8 will also be coming in a third option, which would be 512 gigabytes. We've had a few leaks suggesting this. And also a small possibility that the iPhone 7s will be coming in 3 models as well, so 32, 128, and maybe a 256 gigabytes as well. But one of the main differences between the iPhone 7s and the iPhone 8 is going to be in terms of the price. Which one is more expensive? Well, the iPhone 8 is going to be much more expensive than the iPhone 7s. So the baseline model, the 64 gigabytes one, is going to start at around $999, so about $1,000, and then 920 pounds in the UK, which is crazy expensive for a phone if you think about it. That's pretty much the same price as a high-end computer, as a high-end laptop. Now the iPhone 7s, on the other hand, would start at the exact same prices as the iPhone 7 starts now. So that's for the iPhone 7s, $650 or 600 pounds for the baseline 32 gigabytes model, and then $770 or 720 pounds for the iPhone 7s Plus, again baseline 32 gigabytes model. Now obviously you do get double the storage with the iPhone 8, but still the iPhone 8 is not going to be cheap. So in the end, which one should you get? Should you get the iPhone 8 or should you get the iPhone 7s? Which one should you get? Well, the iPhone 8 is obviously a much better phone. It's much more expensive than the iPhone 7s. So here's what I would honestly suggest. So if you can afford the iPhone 8, just get the iPhone 8. Get the iPhone 8 if you can afford it. Otherwise, I would say just wait until next year in 2018 when Apple will be removing the old iPhone 7s design style and releasing 2 OLED iPhones instead, which would both be cheaper. So yeah, that's what I would suggest. Especially if you have an iPhone 7 or an iPhone 6s, there's actually no actual point to upgrade to the iPhone 7s. I mean, yes, you do get a better camera, you get better performance, but what do you actually need the most? Is it a slightly better camera and a slightly faster phone, or do you need a major redesign with a much better display? So yeah, let me know in the comments what you guys think about all this and which one would you actually pick? the iPhone 8 or the iPhone 7s, and why. But other than that, if you want to see more in-depth comparisons like this one, feel free to subscribe. It's free, by the way, and you can also enable notifications by tapping on that bell icon, and you will be notified as soon as I upload a brand new epic video. And also let me know in the comments if you're epic enough to make it until the end of this video. And I think this is pretty much it. So yeah, thank you all for watching until the end. I'm Daniel, and I'll see you guys in my next one. Son of Tech, signing out. Cheers.